I would request Professor Daniel N. Neuman from University of California at Los Angeles to come on the stage.
This has been an enormous amount of fun. Dear friends, and I'm going to call you friends, we've been living together now for 3 days. I haven't lived with this many people ever in my life, and it's been actually a real delight. I've been thinking a little about the significance of this seminar. I think to call it a seminar is actually a misnomer. It is a conference, and it reminds me of a couple of other conferences. And so since we were celebrating the centenary of Tagore's receiving the Nobel Prize, I'll remind you that the first real All-India Music Conference took place in what was then called Madras in I think 1912, and the first All-India Music Conference that was famous, certainly in the North, was Bhatkande's in 1916. Since we're about on the cusp of 2014, I'd like us to think and project into the future about the significance of this conference. I want to call it a conference because it has been a remarkable assembly of wonderful scholars. I want to thank Dr. Devrup for his kind words and reminding me of something that I've been really fascinated about, and that really has been the trajectory of scholarship from India about Indian music that has actually moved remarkably into interesting spaces in the more than 40 years that I've been involved with India and Indian music. I'd like to make a couple of observations, actually just about two of the papers that I attended today as kind of exemplars of what I'm talking about. There were many fascinating papers. One was by Mrs. Vyas on the Kamaicha of Rajasthan. And the fact that somebody like Dr. Vyas would engage in that kind of research is something, actually, this would not have happened 30, 40 years ago. And the enthusiasm with which she has engaged that research, the enthusiasm she has had with the music, and I'd have to say the skill with which she was able to disentangle an old and I think not terribly useful discourse about classical music and folk music and which is better and which is less important. She did that with great skill, and the fact that she was able to engage that as a subject with that great skill is really something quite new. The other paper, and you'll have to forgive me, I'm an old man, so I can only remember the papers that I had in the last 2 hours, but was by Dr. Ghosh, who talked about D.T. Joshi. D.T. Joshi was somebody very close to our family. Many of you will know who he is, but he's not world famous. And D.T. Joshi was actually my son's teacher as well in Burdwan towards the end of his life. Was actually teacher and the chair of the committee of my sister-in-law, my wife's sister. It was a remarkable paper, actually. I actually was a little surprised. I was expecting to hear things I knew. What I actually heard was stuff that was completely new to me that I didn't know. And she was able to present it not only in a very articulate fashion, an analytical fashion about the influences of Agra through Fayaz Khan, who was one of his teachers, and through the Imdad Khani Gharana through his teacher Inayat Khan, but was able to present it musically in such a compelling fashion. I was flabbergasted, really. And in a way, these two papers, to me, are kind of hallmarks of the outstanding work that has been going on in this conference, which I believe 100 years from now will be remembered the way we remember the conferences back in 1916 and 1912. And although I did say jokingly that Sanjoy will probably never do this again, and I think I'm right, I hope I'm wrong. And I want to thank Sanjoy so much for putting an incredible conference together.
Okay, so this part is over at this stage. Now we have to connect the computer.